Everyone. We're very excited that everyone's joining us today. We have a wonderful speaker, Dr. Andrew Campbell. We're going to talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion this morning. And Dr. Andrew Campbell is going to take us through 3 different sessions, and we'll have a short break between each of them. We're going to talk about an overview of diversity, equity, inclusion, then go into training on anti-Black racism, and then also some training on 2S LGBTQ plus community. And right now, I would like to ask our director, Carla Bailey, to do the land acknowledgement, if she wouldn't mind.
Thank you, Sheena. Okay, Malton Neighborhood Services is located on Treaty 13A of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. This land continues to be home for First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people, many who are students and families in the city of Mississauga. We will continue to learn the true histories of this place we all call home and celebrate the vast contributions First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples have made and continue to make in the story of Canada.
Thank you so much, Carla. I appreciate you doing that. So as I mentioned before, we have a special guest speaker today to teach us about diversity, equity, inclusion, Dr. Andrew Campbell. And I'd just like to give you a little background on Dr. Andrew Campbell. He is an assistant professor teaching STREAM and leadership for racial justice and education in the Department of Curriculum, Teaching and Learning at the University of Toronto, Ontario, Institute for Studies in Education. His scholarship and teaching focus on anti-racist pedagogy, sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong, and diversity in education leadership is well known to the OISE community for his leadership on advancing anti-discrimination work in teacher education. And recently, he received OISE's 2022 award for excellence in initial teacher education. He teaches courses in anti-discrimination, education leadership, diversity, education change, urban education, and Black educators. DR.ABC previously taught at Queen's University, the University of West Indies, Niagara University, Seneca College, and Durham College, in addition to past experience as a classroom teacher and administrator in Jamaica and the Bahamas. He has presented in numerous conferences and has delivered many presentations as a keynote speaker, motivational speaker, workshop facilitator. And he loves people, food, fashion, traveling, and bringing his community together for a good meal. And now at this point, after that introduction, I'd like to turn the floor over to Dr. Andrew Campbell to get started.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here, to be sharing with you. I know in my introduction, the word teach came into the introduction when I was being introduced. Well, what I'm here today is to share with you. And I'm not doing that just to be cute. I'm doing that to be intentional. Because when we come to these workshops, I want people to understand that your voice, your contribution, the things you text in the chat box, when you go into a breakout room, how you interact with each other, all of that is part of the learning. So it's not just coming from me, it's coming from all of us. The way you show up in a space is important. A lot of us are talking about equity and anti-Black racism and anti-racism and all the kind of anti-oppressive practice, social justice. But we keep forgetting that the very way we show up to engage is a part of the work. Are we ready? There's going to be a slide later on in the conversation that speaks about readiness. Are we ready to do this work? And so we're going to have a conversation this morning about becoming a champion for EDI. And I know some of us may say, well, I am just this and I am just that and I work in this department and I don't do this and then I don't know if I'm a champion. But I want all of us to understand that we are champions in our own rights. And I'm sure everybody is aware that the session is being recorded for those who are unable to be here. And for those of us who are here, to use it as a reminder. So when I do a recording and I share it with you all, it is there for you to use it as a reminder, to use it in your smaller groups to discuss points, you know, that happens. So just know that this is also a part of the process. So champions, why do we need champions in this work? Why do we need champions in this work? And I'm going to start with a visual that is very important. I'm going to start with this visual, and this visual, I'll take it to you. It's a stage. It's a theater. It's a place where we prepare ourselves for performances. It's a place where people act, where people engage, not naturally not themselves, but they are in a role. My question to you is, when it comes to work of equity, diversity, inclusion, social justice, anti-oppressive practices, caring, sharing, seeing each other, are we in a performance or are we being authentic? A lot of us are engaged in the performance of inclusion. It's very big, the performance of inclusion. Let me say the right words. I'm going to get a promotion. I'm going up for a promotion. They're going to ask me the equity question. Let me have the right words. Let me use the word disrupt, dismantle. Let me use the word inclusive. Let me use BIPOC. Let me use indigenous. Let me use missing and murdered indigenous women. Let me say all the things that will allow people to think of me as inclusive. And then what we do when we walk away, there it's not genuine, because when we walk away, there is no flow, there is no action, there is nothing intentional. And so when we are caught up in performances, what happens is that we leave these workshops and we are unchallenged, we are unchanged, and as the young people say, we are unbothered. So my job today is to challenge you. If at any part or time during this conversation today, you feel challenged, remember, that is my job, to challenge you. If there's any part in our conversation today, you feel bothered by what I'm saying, it is my job to make sure you are bothered by this. That is my role. That is why I'm here. Because we need to be bothered about what's happening around us in the 2S LGBTQIA community. We need to be bothered when we see deficit thinking about our employees and the community we serve. We need to be bothered when we realize there's big conversation about truth and reconciliation, but there are no actions. We need to be bothered when we see Islamophobia, anti-Semitism, when we see anti-Black racism, when we see homelessness, when we look and see how many people are living out on the street, when we see the increase in people going to food banks, poverty, when we see the marginalization and the missed opportunities, when we see the abuse, when we see the lack of respect, the lack of cultural competence, the lack of grace, the lack of people seeing each other, we need to be bothered. We need to be bothered when we see the bias in our departments, in our hiring practices. We need to be bothered when we see microaggressions still alive and active. We need to be bothered when people in leadership are unaware of what's happening. There's a lot of people who are unaware. We need to be bothered. I want to encourage us that it is our job to be bothered. So a lot of us talk about, oh, we want to disrupt. We want to disrupt racism. We want to disrupt, anti-Black racism. We want to decolonize. That's a word we're using a lot when it comes to indigenous folks. We want to act in decolonized ways. What does that mean? What does that mean? How aware are you? There are many people, and I speak very frankly. If you follow me on social media, you'll realize that there are many people who are only here today because it's a part of your job description. The only reason why you're logged in is because you're part of the team. And if you're not here, they're going to say, well, Gloria is absent, Andrew is absent, Carla is absent, Fatima is absent. And that's the only reason why you are here today. Ask yourself, is that enough reason for me to do the work. Some of us, we are so unprepared. We go outside and we are part of these work, but we are unprepared. Ask yourself, how are you preparing yourself to lead, to be a champion, to be inclusive? How are you preparing yourself to speak up and to speak out, to be an ally? You know, I go to places and during June, everybody has a pride flag. During Truth and Reconciliation, everybody's wearing an orange t-shirt. During Black History Month, everybody's saying Black Lives Matter. And you do that very particular. It's very, very performative. Ask yourself, how can I move from being performative to being intentional? Write that down. How do I move from being performative to being intentional? And how do I move from being just aware? Some of you, you're not performative. You're amazing. You're just unaware. How do I move from unawareness to awareness? And then when I get into awareness, how do I move from awareness to action? How do I move from just being here to actually acting, to being an advocate, to be a true ally, to stand up, to speak up, to engage in courageous conversations? How am I doing that? Because this work is personal. Your organization may have you here, but this work is extremely personal. I want you to understand that. This work is personal. So ask yourself, how am I doing this work? And so as we get into this conversation today, I want to also share a very specific slide with you all. What's in a name? Because we get a lot of people asking me questions about EDI work, and some persons are over EDI work. Some people don't care about EDI. Some people be like, I don't know what this is. We need to go back to indigeneity work. We need to go back to decolonizing work. I don't want to hear about racism. I want to hear about anti-Black racism. I don't want to be lumped with it. I don't know what BIPOC is. It's not a word. It's not an acronym. And we get involved. So I put a lot of acronyms there. And I leave all of that there for a reason. Some of you know them. And I say, what's in a name? What's in a word? I see some of you, I see a group of persons in a certain room. So big up to that group. Later on, if you could change your name, I think it's B. Barati or somebody's there. Yes, I see you. I see you. Don't worry, I see you. Maybe later on you could change the name and say what group it is so I could big you up. I see you all coming together in that space, intentional. I love that. I see the group together. And remember, this is not just a speaking series, it's a workshop. So you're going to go in breakout rooms. We will not record breakout rooms. There's no recording when you go in a breakout room. We close it, we pause the recording so you can have privacy in having those conversations and coming on camera and engaging in that. So what's in a name? What's in a word? I put that all there because so many people are caught up in, well, is it BIPOC? What is BIPOC? Black, Indigenous, people of color. Well, somebody's missing. Oh, yes, somebody's missing. And that's why I also add, people say other equity seeking group. You'll hear that word. You'll hear that term. You'll hear also other equity deserving group. So I normally put like OEDS, other equity deserving group. I hope you're taking notes of that. I put all of that at the beginning of our conversation today because I want you to realize, don't get too caught up in the acronyms. Is it equity, diversity, and inclusion? Is it justice? Is it justice, equity, diversity, inclusion? Is it diversity, equity, inclusion? Is it social justice? Is it EDI, AO, anti-oppressive? It is SG. What is it? Is it anti-oppressive, anti-discriminatory, AOAD? For me, I want to say to you, don't get caught up on an acronym, on a word. I want you to get caught up in the action. MNS, thank you, MNS. I see you, MNS, that group. How are we getting caught up in the action? What are we doing intentionally? Ask yourself, how is my empathy? How is my respect? How is my inclusion? How is my allyship? How is my advocacy? That is what I want you to leave today asking. Not majoring on the minor. Is it LGBTQ? Is it LGBTQIA+? Is it 2S LGBTQIA+? Ask yourself, how am I being an ally to someone who is different? How am I being inclusive to those who are marginalized and excluded? It's a call to action for us today. And that is what I want us to move into today. So as we get into the agenda, I have a few things I want us to kind of talk about. I want us to talk about how we articulate a deep awareness of the issues of equity surrounding us. How are we articulating that? I want us to talk about our position on the equity journey. Where are you to your learning and your unlearning? I'm very big on that. If you follow me on social media or LinkedIn, and all of you have permission to add me to LinkedIn, because that's where I share a lot of stuff. A lot of people can tell you, they'll say, Dr. Campbell, I learned so much from your LinkedIn page because I share stuff there. Ask yourself, how am I learning and unlearning? What do you need to unlearn? What do you need to unlearn? What do you need to learn? Ask yourself, what are my tools? How am I engaging how am I engaging in the tools to have courageous conversations? How am I speaking up, showing up, and standing up? Ask yourself. These are the questions we're asking ourselves today. The next one, how do I understand my role as an advocate or an ally or an activist or just a friend? You don't need a title to do this work. Some of us, I see, we are fighting for a title. You don't need a title to do this work. You need a heart for people. You do not need a title to do this work. Stop trying to ask everybody to call you an ally or an advocate or a co-conspirator. You just need to be a person with a heart for others. Next one. How are we evaluating our readiness for action? How are we engaged in moral courage? I always say, how do you embody the work? So when people come, even if somebody comes at me about the work that I do, I will always say to people, my work is not just on paper. I embody my work. If you meet me on the street, I guarantee you my conversation will be the same as it is today. If you meet me at some cottage, if you meet me at Canada Wonderland, if you meet me at Coney, Niagara, you meet me at a bar, you meet me at a hotel, you meet me somewhere, you will realize this is who I am outside of a workshop, outside of a formal conversation. Who are you outside of an opportunity to perform equity? I want to repeat that. Who are you outside of an opportunity to perform, to share that you are engaged in equity? Who are you outside of the titles of allies and advocate and co-conspirator? If I meet you at a bar, if I meet you on the subway, if I meet you at Niagara, if I meet you on vacation somewhere in Punta Cana or somewhere in Jamaica, would you be the same person as you are in a workshop, in a research conference, talking about equity, inclusion, anti-Black racism, decolonization, or it's just a performance? How are we embodying the work? Do you embody the work? Is the work who you are? Or, like so many people are complaining, is equity just something else on the side of your desk? Because if equity is something on the side of your desk, that's why you're not doing it well. It needs to be inside of you. You have to embody the work of equity, diversity, inclusion, embody the work of being anti-racist, embody the work of being inclusive, embody the work of decolonizing. What does that mean? Stop hanging on to a word. Stop being so major on a title and a term. Ask yourself, how is my action? So as we move into this conversation, I want us to have a little activity this morning. So we're going to stop And I'm going to have a little activity in a breakout room, just a little 5 minutes. And this activity is going to be about, why do we need champions? Think about all that is happening in your department, in your work, in your location, in your community, the place where you engage in, church, mosque, buildings, groups, wherever you are. Ask yourself, why is it we need champions in these spaces? So what I'm going to do, I'm going to ask all of us to take a minute to click on the link. I'm going to be putting a link. There's going to be more than one, so you only need to click one. You only need to click one, because we all won't get into the first one. So you only need to click one. So that's the first link. So if you could click on that one and get into that one, go ahead and do that. And if you don't get into that one, click on that. Yes, I see people getting in the room, so I know it's working. Thank you so much. I see people clicking in on it. And those of you in a group, one person can click on it in the room and you'll type on behalf of everybody else, because somebody needs to be there to do the work. The second link, if you didn't get in the first link, here it is. And as we go into our breakout room, I'm going to put a pause. And as we go into our breakout rooms, I want us to be very intentional. And so let me share with you what it looks like. What it looks like. So this is what it looks like, everybody. This is what your breakout room, your Jamboard will look like. And what you'll do, you can see I'm going to demonstrate. You'll click on this over here. This is a sticky note. You'll click on the sticky note and you just add your comment there. Add a word, a comment, a phrase, whatever, and you press save and it will just go like that. Okay? And I want us to do that. We're going to take some time to have this discussion with each other and ask ourselves, what are those things within our community, within our workplace that we need a champion for? What are the issues and the concerns? So I'm going to put the recording at pause right now. It's on pause. All right. Welcome back, everyone. Welcome back, everyone, into the space. I see everybody's coming back. You can turn off your mic. There are persons with mics on. Welcome back to the space. Welcome back. So as we get into this conversation, we see where people shared and the different sharing of why we need equity, why we need champions. And we see the opportunities, we see the networking, we see the setting of example. This is actually quite popular. The one about advocacy and setting example and leadership, quite popular. What I want to show you is a number of samples of other rooms. And let me just say this, when I do workshops, which is tons of these, there are different levels of engagement. So I want you to understand, as an educator, as a person who have done tons of workshops, I do know what energy looks like. And so I want you to be very intentional when you participate in a workshop like this. So this is one from another group that I worked with. Why do we need champions? And you see the level of conversation. We see the conversation. We see again the leadership. We see again about examples. We see about creating other champions, because you can't do this work by yourself. So ask yourself, in this work, how am I being intentional? We have another example here as well. Why do we need champions? It's another example. Bringing the issue to light. It's another group sharing their ideas about why we need champions. I want you to, as you're looking, even you come back to the video, I want you to take a minute to look at the different things being shared by people who are in the same area of work like you, who are dealing with youth, who are dealing with students, who are dealing with community, who are dealing with employees, who are in leadership, supervision. These are the kind of conversations that are happening. I want to show you another one because I'm intentional to show you what is happening and the kind of language being used when you think of the work of equity, diversity, and inclusion and the work of a champion. Role models. No matter how many times I do this, the word providing hope, creating change, is always one of the most popular one there. Making connections to open our eyes, ears, and hearts and minds to see each other. Then the last one I'll share with you from another group. Here we go again. Here we go again. So ask yourself, as we do this work, you ask yourself why we need champions. Is there anyone who want to take a minute, just a minute, to share, to say something like what in the group, what came up for you? What stood out to you? Anybody want to do that? Take a minute to share. 30 seconds. What stood out to you? What came up for you? Any volunteers? That's okay. I know some of us are shy. You know, we're on camera, that kind of stuff. All right, let's move on with this conversation. Let's move on. And so as we continue this conversation, we just came from a breakout room with that. And so what I want to do is take you to another picture, another image I have that is very intentional. And when I do this, I will ask people, what do you see? What are you seeing? What are you seeing? And a lot of persons would say, well, I see the man in the suit. Some person would see the hammer quickly. Some person will see the missing, broken wall. Another person will go straight and say, Dr. Campbell, I see the possibilities. I see what happens when we break through the barriers. I see what is possible when we disrupt and dismantle, the word we like to use. So as you're doing this, I put you out unnoticed as a change agents, because that's what some of you call yourself on your resume. Put yourself as a leader. That's what you call yourself when you apply for this job. See yourself as an advocate. That's what you put on your LinkedIn and to do all these things. How do you see yourself in this work as a champion? I have had, and I'll surprise you, I have had workshops where people were so major on the idea that there was a hammer, because they need the work to be done in a way where they don't want to feel any pressure. I'm sure you know it's a big thing. You come to these kind of workshops and people will say, well, we want to make sure, you know, nobody's triggered, and I want to make sure, you know, everybody feel comfortable. I'm going to go off camera. I'm going to go off screen share, and I'm going to center something in a minute. These are not conversations where you're going to walk away feeling comfortable. I want to pause for dramatic effect on that one, because that seems to be a trend where people are like, oh, but I want to talk about equity. I want to talk about diversity inclusion. Oh, I want to talk about decolonize. I want to talk about these things, but I want to feel comfortable. This is the environment where you're going to feel some form of discomfort. And I want you to be okay with that. We want brave conversations. You want courageous conversation. You want a brave space, but you want to feel, just relax, sipping your coffee and feel comfortable. That is not what happens in this kind of workshop. And if that is what your intention is, well, I want you to think about how intentional you are when it comes to this kind of conversation. So I really want to underline that for all of us as we think about the work we're doing, think about change agent, think about equity, diversity, and inclusion. The good news I love of this picture is I want you to center your view on the possibilities. What would this place look like? What would this work look like if we were able to disrupt and break down the barriers that we are aware of, that are keeping many of our clients, our community in very marginalized, needed spaces? I said something at an event the other day that people said, Dr. Campbell, that was so intentional and powerful. A lot of us want to disrupt, and we want to disrupt, and we are very big on disrupting until that disrupting requires of us to disrupt things that are near and dear and close to us. If we empty the prisons and have less people being full in all these prisons we see, what we call the school to prison pipeline, we're going to have less people employed as prison warders. If we have less people's children in child services, there are people who make their living from being a part of the child service industry, so to speak. You may not have a job. There are many organizations who will keep people in marginalized spaces because your livelihood is dependent on someone else being marginalized. A very touchy topic, but it's a real topic. So ask yourself, am I genuinely willing to disrupt and to dismantle and to break down a barrier? Because some of us, we benefit. Let me just say this to you. There are people who are benefiting from racism. Oh, it's Wednesday morning. Let me get into it. There are people who are benefiting from anti-Black racism. There are people who benefit from Islamophobia and homophobia. There are people who benefit from keeping a certain community marginalized. There are gatekeepers who benefit from their gatekeeping. There are performative people who benefit from their performative. White supremacy benefit from it. And I'm going to say something because it's going to come up in the next topic when we talk about racism. I always remind people, and if you don't know, let me inform you, 2023, November, what date is today? The 22nd. There are people walking about us who are still benefiting from the legacy of slavery. Oh yes, there are tons of documentation of how when slavery was abolished, how landowners and slave owners, how the insurance were paid for their loss of property. And the persons who were being held as slaves were let go, sent off with not even a good pair of clothes on their backs. And we question today why certain communities are in a place where they're in constant struggle. Equity, inequity, marginalization. So when we talk about being a champion, are you willing to be a champion for the truth? Are you willing to speak up and stand up for the cause? Ask yourself that, because as we do this work of being a champion, what you have to do is be willing to identify the issues. I have been to workshops where when I talk about what are the issues, people are listing things on the Jamboard. You don't even have space. You have seen some of the Jamboards. They don't even have space. 20 people in the room, and there's not even space on the Jamboard because they are speaking up. And I've been to places where people sit like this. They're sipping their coffee, and it's like nothing is happening. They are unbothered. If you are in this room and you are very much unbothered by all the issues happening around you, I want to say how sad it is that you are so unbothered. How sad it is that you are unable to identify the barriers within your own organization. How sad it is. So identifying what's happening is important. Disrupting what happened is important. Dismantling what happened is important. And that is the only way we are going to get change. This is my equation that I came up with. Are you willing to invest in the change that is needed? I have talked to HR organizations. Let me give you an example. And people will say, well, we are fine. And then I've spoken to other HR organizations and they say, Dr. Campbell, we have seen the issues in even our job advertisement. We are working, this organization, we are actually working how we are rewriting the job descriptions. I have been saying this. You can look at my video. I've been saying this for about 5 years, that Whoever in HR decided to hire someone to print and photocopy paper and write on that job description, you need 5 years of candidate experience, you are ridiculous. You are ridiculous. Oh, am I recording? Yes, I am. You are ridiculous to think that somebody needs 5 years candidate experience to photocopy paper. You know why you have done it. You know the intention behind it. You know who you want to erase. You know who you don't want to be included. And then it's on the news. It's on the news. It's on the news last week. They are now making a law that says you can't put it. You can go on my YouTube. I'm sure you can find maybe 5 videos where I have made that statement 5 years ago, way before it was popular. Now it's happened. And when I said it, there were people in HR who was offended. But I'm not here to please you. Nobody paid me to please you. I could tell you, pleasing you, making you happy is not a part of my contract. My contract is for us to have a conversation about how we are championing the cause in our organization for those who we serve. And you know who you serve. So tell me, how are you working intentionally? How is your readiness for this work? How is your readiness? I always tell people, as we're going to wrap up this section, I always tell people, tell me how ready you are to do this work. How ready you are to do this work. Because who you are impacts how you lead. Who you are impacts how you lead. You could pretend to be inclusive, but I'm going to find you one day by the pool. I'm going to find you by the Starbucks. I'm going to find you by your cottage. I'm going to find you hanging out with your girlfriends or on the corner with your boys. And you're going to say something that comes from your heart that let me realize this is genuinely who you are. You are not an inclusive person. Because of your job title, you are wrapped up in performance. So who are you? Who you are impacts how you lead. Spend time to know who you are. Spend time to learn and to grow. Spend time to unpack. Spend time to disrupt your own personal biases. Spend time to say, wow, that is a word I used 2 years ago. Wow, I'm so glad I understand I can't use that word. If I tell you how many things let me just pause to say this to you. If I tell you, I like to talk to people, Sheena, Blossom, I like to talk to people, Ali. If I tell you, Carla, how much I have grown, you'd be surprised. So if you think that I'm coming to you, DR.ABC, PhD, and I know it all, I want you to know that is a joke. I could tell you mistakes that I have made in the past. I can tell you things that may have sounded funny 10 years ago, but I understand today that is not funny. That is not a joke. That is not a phrase you use. That is not a word you say. Things that I heard people say when I came to Toronto in 2008 about First Nations and Indigenous folks. And I listen and I go, what? And I knew something was wrong with that language, but I couldn't put my finger on it. But I've learned, I have grown, I have engaged in my own learning and unlearning. So you are not going to be the champion you need to be if you don't engage in your learning, your unlearning. Change from the inside. Ask yourself, what do I need to be a better person, to be a better co-worker, to be a better Andrew, to be a better Blossom, to be a better Ali, to be a better Jonah, to be a better Rebecca? What do I need? Do you know? I have to go into this a little bit. Do you know the number of people who work in places that they do not feel there's a sense of belonging? If I tell you the number of people I've spoken to about belonging, you'd be surprised. Co-workers, no sense of belonging. And they ask me, DR.ABC, how do we go about this? And I say to people, is your office Is the culture and the climate in your organization says to people, you belong here? And then I ask the next question, who is responsible for ensuring belonging? And the answer, people always surprise. And the answer is all of us. Every single one of us. Nobody in this building is paid to make sure everybody belongs. If somebody have that job, like you're the director of belonging, I don't know about that job. Sorry, I don't know about that job. Every one of us have the opportunity to create a more inclusive environment. Every one of us have the opportunity to bring your heart, your kindness, your empathy, your grace, your patience, your cultural competence, your cultural humility, your hugs, your smile, your ways of saying to people, hey, I see you. Hey, you belong here. Hey, welcome to this organization. Welcome to this space. So as we wrap up this first part of our conversation today, I remind all of us, who you are impacts how you lead. I remind all of us that we are on a journey. And I want to say to you all, I've shown this a million times. If you have followed me, I'm sure you have seen this picture before. I wish to God, I wish with my whole heart that the journey of equity, diversity, and inclusion was smooth like this, just cool. You get yourself a nice Starbucks, get yourself a nice, bubble tea with some good tapioca in it. You jump in your car, put on your glasses, and you just drive, equity, right? We're just doing it, right? But it's not like that. Instead, it's like this. It's tangled. It requires of us to really do some detangle. It requires of us to be a little bit more intentional. What it doesn't require of us to do is to be parked up doing nothing. This is dangerous, not this. This is okay. It's okay to feel tensions today. It's okay to have wonderings. It's okay to have questions. It's okay to be uncomfortable. It's okay to feel the pressure of equity and the pressure of around you in the organization. What is not okay is that we are parked up doing absolutely nothing. So I leave to you and I ask you, what is your role? What is your role? Are you just going to be a bystander, a pretender, a box checker? Or are you going to be intentional to be an ally, to be an actor, take on a real role in this thing, to be an ally, to be an advocate, to be an activist, to be an accomplice, to be a co-conspirator? These are all fancy, nice words. What they really mean is that your heart is genuinely learning and growing to be that champion, to be inclusive. That's exactly what it means. Nothing deeper than that. So as we go today to our break, I want you to remember your actions to promote inclusion within your organization must be intentional and deliberate. Inclusion doesn't just happen. Microaggression don't just disappear. Racism just don't melt away. Islamophobia, anti-Semitism, ageism, sexism, genderized, issues, they don't just melt away. People like you and I, our actions are intentional. We are deliberate. We want this organization to be better. We want our office environment to be better. We want inclusion. We want safety. We want brave spaces. We want belonging. And if we want that, we individually will need to be more intentional and deliberate. I've been saying that from 2017. No, not yesterday. No, not because of George Floyd. No, not because of what's going on in whatever region. This has been my work for years, even before this time. Walk away for your break right now and ask yourself, what are the little things I want to start with in my journey to becoming that champion? What are the things I want to continue to do, knowing I am a champion? Has to be intentional, has to be deliberate. Thank you so much. We stop the recording and we go for a break.